Okay, now we are done in the topic number 4. Now let's go to the topic number 5, which is the Walnut City Jail in 1790. What is Walnut City Jail? Walnut Street Prison behind Old Gaol. Okay. Tanan. What has been called the first American penitentiary? So, it is called the first American penitentiary, if not the first one in the world. Was established in Philadelphia in 1790 in the Walnut Street Jail, a building formerly operated as a city jail. Okay, so here it is. This is the Walnut City Jail. Next, the cell blocks constructed in the Walnut Street Jail pursued to the law of 1790 introduced in permanent fashion the structural pattern of outside cell with a central corridor. Okay, central corridor. Here. The chief architectural features of the Pennsylvania system of prisons constructed. So it is an architectural features of Pennsylvania. It appears from contemporary accounts where the effort to reform those in the prison and to segregate them according to age, sex, and type of the offenses charged against them. It is being said that the Walnut Street Jail is originally constructed as a detention jail in Philadelphia. It was converted into a state prison and became the first American penitentiary. And then it became the first United States penitentiary system. When legislation was passed, provisions were made to establish the principles of solitary confinement. Of course, it also have a strict discipline, a productive work, and segregations of the dangerous offenders. So that's what in Walnut Street Jail. Okay? In the 16th to 18th centuries, flogging, branding, and mutilation continued to exist as the more common forms of punishment during those times. Mutilation was tied to a crime committed. The hands of the thieves were cut off. That's their system during those times. The hands of the thieves were cut off so that they could not steal again, and also to serve as a reminder to others, to deter them from committing crimes. Okay? Spies have had their eyes plucked out. Liars had their tongues cut. The brank, a metal frame put into a head like a hat, and a painful mouthpiece was inserted in the mouth of the offenders, whose punishment were similarly imposed on women to steal their tongues. Pylorys and stocks were used on convicts for shortchanging the public, such as selling fake or rotten products. If the public hates the offender, they would even throw stinking eggs or meat, garbage, or even dead animals on the floor on the offender. Okay, that was their system during those times in 16th to 18th centuries. Mercantilism was on the rise and was gradually but steadily on the ascendancy, while the old social order, feudalism, was likewise gradually but steadily eroding and collapsing. The landlords were slowly receding, and the capitalists were on the ascendancy. Okay? Naturally, there was a clash of two people's order, the receding landlords and the ascending merchants. One was resisting its inevitable march to oblivion, while the other was insisting change. See? Resisting, the other one is resisting for an inevitable march to oblivion, and the other one is insisting for change. These two social forces were fighting it out to control the common people for exploitation. The landlords wants to retain them as peasants to work their vast long holdings, while the emerging capitalist class was pushing more democracy. Which was only a sanitized term for the right of the newly emerging capitalists to also gain rights, of course, to exploit the people as slaves workers, being paid measly wages. So, the two social forces were fighting. They has a different stand for during those times. Since capitalism was on the rise while feudalism was on the retreat. Capitalism and feudalism. Naturally, the situation forced many to leave the landlords and seek employment in the sweatshops. More and more people were leaving the countrysides for the cities without homes or job. So, because of this, the citizens were living in the countrysides without homes and jobs to work on. This was the principal cause of the American Civil War, okay, which was nothing but the battle of the Yankees for the equal rights, fighting for the equal rights to possess and exploit the plantation slaves of the Southern Confederacy. Now, we are finished on the chapter 5, which is the Walnut St Jail. Now let's go to the topic number 6, which is King Henry VIII. Who is King Henry VIII? King Henry VIII of England. This is King Henry. Okay. King Henry VIII is normally depicted in the history books as a large man in Tudor dress, sporting a beard. This is a Tudor dress, sporting with beard. When we think of Henry, we see the dissolution of the Catholic Church, one of his largest royal actions. So this is Henry VIII of England. King Henry VIII of England decreed corporal punishment for vagrants. Okay? King Henry VIII of England decreed a corporal punishment for vagrants. When we say vagrants, those are those person who has no place to live in, no job to do, no work, and they're the one who asked, whose persons who asked people for money. Okay? In 1531, and penal slavery in 1547 to defend the interest of the still dominant landlords class, where the nobility gets their privileged status in society. Okay, and next one. Okay, so you can observe in this slide, King Henry VIII has 6 wives. These are Catherine of Aragon, Anne Boleyn, Jane Seymour, Anne of Cleves, Catherine Howard, and Catherine Parr. Okay, do you imagine that King Henry has 6 wives? Okay, his 6 wives I know, but I suppose they do fit together, as it was the inability to divorce one of his queens that led him to act so drastically towards the Church of England, being the end result of his marital disagreements. Okay? Henry's first wife was the widow of his brother. His elder brother, in fact, who died at the young age of 15. So, King Henry's first wife is Catherine of Aragon. He was the wife of his brother. Catherine was the wife of his brother who died at the age of 15, and now Catherine is now a widow, so King Henry and Catherine is married. This helped seal an alliance between England and Spain. Okay, King Henry VIII, his first wife was the widow of his brother Arthur, his elder brother, in fact, who died at the young age of 15. So, this happened to seal an alliance between England and Spain, because King Henry VIII is from England and Catherine is from Spain. So, this helped seal an alliance between England and Spain, as Catherine of Aragon was the daughter of King Ferdinand II and Queen Isabella of Castile. To make this marriage possible, both parties had to ask the Pope, then Pope Julius II, to grant dispensation to avoid religious havoc. In the book of Leviticus, it states that if one were to marry his brother's wife, they will remain childless, meaning King Henry and Catherine of Aragon must remain childless, because that's their regulations during those times, during Henry's times. So, to get the Pope's approval and to avoid claims of affinity, Catherine of Aragon claimed that her marriage to Arthur had not been consummated, although sexual intercourse was normally the act which confirmed a Tudor marriage. Tudor is a term there in England. Okay? But I suppose they do fit together, as it was the inability of Catherine of Aragon's marital bliss was short-lived, as we saw the two divorced shortly after. So Catherine and Henry divorced. After that, the next one is Anne Boleyn, which is Anne was being beheaded. Jane Seymour died. Anne of Cleves beheaded. Catherine Howard died. And his sixth and final wife, Catherine Parr, outlived the monarch to be buried as a peasant in a pauper's grave. So, the 6 women, their life is, I don't know. Anne Boleyn is King Henry's second wife. Jane Seymour was King Henry's third wife. Anne of Cleves was King Henry's fourth wife, and Catherine Howard was the fifth wife, was his fifth wife, and the sixth and final wife is Catherine Parr. See, we are all aware that Henry VIII was a man who took action, a man who was strong-minded and willing to see the death of his wives. See? That's King Henry. Although not many of us are aware of his love for reversed. Okay? If you see a movie, or this is in a history documentary, I guess, if you see a movie of King Henry VIII, you will know this, his sixth wife, the life of his 6 wives. Okay? So, Greensleeves. What is Greensleeves? It is said this is a folk song. Greensleeves came about during Henry's courting for his second wife, which is Anne Boleyn. Henry had many trouble in trying to convince Anne Boleyn to become his queen. In hopes of wooing ouch! Henry had many troubles trying to convince his second wife, Anne Boleyn, to become his queen. In hopes of wooing the pending victims of decapitation, Henry took quill in hand of penned and lyrics that we have seen put to music. That's why it put to a folk song, becoming Greensleeves long after his death. The title Greensleeves was believed came into being as Anne Boleyn was a lover of a green, and like most Tudor women, wore long sleeves and covered the wrist. So, that's what you can see in the picture. That is a Tudor woman during those times. Anne Boleyn wearing green. Realizing that the old-fashioned methods of savage punishment as the deterrent to this migratory tide did not simply work, the Bridewell institution in Bridewell, England, was established in 1556. Though some writers claim that this took place in 1552. During the reign of King Edward VI, which was established as the workhouse for vagabonds, idler, and roughs, which was established as a workhouse for vagabonds. When we say vagabonds, these are those people who don't have a fixed home, moving from place to place. That's what is vagabonds, the idlers and the roughs. The Bible was a reform of some sort of overall the traditional, already unworkable system of punishment. The bridal system. But even in prison conditions were to the inescapable and manifest advantage of the ascending capitalist class. It is being said that it is inescapable. So this is the bridal system. You will notice that it is all women having their child, or I don't know. Okay, you'll further know what is bridal system. Okay, now, okay, we are now done in the life of King Henry. Now let's go to the life of King Edward VI, the son of King Henry. Okay, the topic 7, Edward VI, a jewel of King Henry VIII. Okay, this is King Edward, rather. So King Edward is so neat because he was a jewel of King Henry VIII. Okay, October 12, 1537 to July 6, 1553. Next, Edward the Sixth was crowned at the age of 9. Could you imagine that? With no maturity to lead his kingdom from the front of Regency Council, was set up to assist his role. Okay? It was during Edward's rule to Protestants acquire a bigger hold over Catholicism in England. Catholicism in England. Okay? Edward VI recognized his cousin, Lady Jane Grey, as an heir to the throne. So he recognized Lady Jane as his cousin as an heir of the throne, which was not accepted by the Privy Council. It is not accepted by the Privy Council, and declared Mary, his Catholic half-sister, to bear the crown. Instead of Lady Jane, it is Mary, his Catholic half-sister. Edward was born to King Mary VIII and his third wife, Jane Seymour. So, King Edward's father is King Henry VIII, and his mother is Jane Seymour, which is the third wife of King Henry. King Henry VIII broke up with both his wives, and he also executed his second wife, which is Anne Boleyn, second wife, under the adultery, for the only reason that she did not bear him a son. So Anne Boleyn was beheaded because of the reason that Anne Boleyn cannot bear a son. So the king and kingdom was wishing for a male heir, to the throne, and the long wait was over on the 12th of October 1537 when Edward was born. Okay, that's why King Edward VI was a jewel to King Henry VIII, because King Edward is his first son ever, because he wants an heir of a son. Okay, an heir of the throne, to the throne.